Chris. Hello, welcome everyone to the Paketo working group meeting. We're really glad that you are here. Let me show my screen real quick. Again, as usual, feel free to add yourself to that in this list, including your affiliation. It's a good way to connect after the meeting. For this session, is there anyone who would like to take notes?
I can take notes.
Thank you, Frankie. Thank you. Right. Any new faces? Probably I don't have from memory, or I don't remember Brett joining before. If I'm wrong, sorry. But if this is your first time in this meeting, feel free to introduce yourself.
Hey there, my name is Milevsky. I am the once and future product manager of something called cloud.gov, which is a Cloud Foundry deployment run by the GSA for other federal agencies in the US. And I just recently found out that, contrary to what I understood, that the Paketo Buildpacks, the CNBs, would not be coming to Cloud Foundry as it stands. So I thought I'd start getting more involved upstream on Paketo and figure out what's going on. So I'm just here to kind of observe and hear what's the latest.
Welcome, Brett. Very nice to have you here. All right, yeah. Hope you have the notes by now, Brett, and our team. And yes, for the meeting invite, not sure I'm the owner of that invite, but yeah, we'll make sure to put the notes there. All right, awesome. Okay, before outstanding RFC, probably we want to discuss events, Paketo at KubeCon.
Everybody, yeah, I just wanted to pop in and kind of get some feedback from you all. Cloud Foundry Foundation and the CF Governing Board and Linux Foundation events, we're kind of trying to figure out what kind of event we might want to do for Cloud Foundry this year. You know, during the pandemic, we had a couple of virtual events. I think probably everyone's in agreement that we're all tired of virtual events. So we want to do something in person this year. And what I'm sort of leaning towards is doing a co-located event at KubeCon in Detroit in late October. And along with like a one-day, Cloud Foundry Foundation and some time for Paketo as well, before KubeCon starts, it would be like the Monday or Tuesday that week. I believe that would also come along with having a booth at KubeCon. And I was thinking that perhaps that would actually best serve Paketo more than anyone else. There is the new CF on Kate's deployment, which is going to reach a beta release in the next few weeks, but that'll probably still be in beta at that point. So I don't know if that's something we'll be actively pushing at KubeCon at that point, right? But that could be a sub-narrative. I just wanted to get your all perspectives on, how valuable would it be to have a Paketo booth on the floor at KubeCon in Detroit later this year? Is that something I should push for? Is that something you all would be excited about? Do you think that would help reach out to the wider CNCF community? So just wanted to chat about that.
I guess I would say that personally, I'd be interested in going and volunteering if you need volunteers for a booth. Detroit's not far from me, so
yeah,
it's easy. Yeah,
I mean, I think with the team here and folks at CNCF or CFF, and I'm sure we could staff a booth. I want to know how valuable that might be to the Paketo project to have that presence on the floor there. I mean, Buildpacks have picked up steam a little bit with Google adding theirs on. I think in the Buildpack space, if I understand it right, Heroku, Paketo, and Google are sort of the biggest projects in that space. So would it be helpful to get new contributors, to get new end users for Paketo Buildpacks to be on the floor at KubeCon? Is the real question.
What do you see as the typical return on that? Like, is it a good marketing investment if there's something that we're trying to to push? I mean, I think in general, we're always looking to get more eyes on Paketo, but
Right.
Do you have to have something specific? Is there some new thing that we're trying to promote?
No, there wouldn't have to be. I mean, the Cloud Foundry Foundation or Cloud Foundry will have kind of the new reference deployment on Kubernetes that'll be in beta at that point. And so I think the booth would, maybe be co-logoed with Paketo and CF, and we talk about Paketo Buildpacks. We'd also talk a bit about, where we're at with, deploying Cloud Foundry on the Kubernetes. But I just wanted to get, test the, see what you all thought about that. Is that something that would have a lot of value for Paketo as a project? Ryan, you said, I don't think so. Is that, you want to weigh in on that?
Sorry, I was responding to Sam's question about KubeCon EU. I don't think we're going to have anyone in person at the KubeCon EU, which is coming up pretty short here in May.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Just wanted to clarify. I didn't know if that was so. Yeah, I mean, that is soon. And yeah, we're not planning on sending anyone there. But KubeCon Detroit, I believe, is the last week in October. And, at that point, pandemic willing, I suspect things will be getting sort of back to normal if they haven't already in the last month or two, at least in the US. So I'm cautiously optimistic that that could be a good opportunity. This is sort of what I'm leaning towards as opposed to a standalone Cloud Foundry Foundation event. Because I think most developers would see value in going to KubeCon because they get to go to other talks. Certainly, if you're already going to go there for a Cloud Foundry standalone event and KubeCon, I would suspect that all of you would be more inclined to put in talks to KubeCon, which I think would also be good for Paketo. So I just wanted to get a sense of, how enthusiastic you all would be for this. Is this super valuable? Is this a great thing that I should definitely push for? Or is this something, just trying to test the waters? And yes, also, Daniel, thank you. Who wants to go to Detroit in October? I do. I'm itching to go anywhere after having not traveled for work in 2.5 years. You could send me to literally any city in the world and I'd be kind of happy. So,
I mean, I do think the visibility would be nice. I know we're trying to grow, people using the product and grow features. And so hearing from people to get feedback on, if they've ever heard of Paketo, if they're using it, if they have issues with it, if they have suggestions, all that would be great feedback, I think.
Okay. Now we can continue this conversation, offline or on Slack or whatnot. But anyone that feels strongly about this one or the other, just let me know. We'll make a decision somewhat soon, but it's not urgent, right? Because that's still some months away. But I'm gonna try and get approval from the governing board, in the next few weeks as to what we want to do, whether or not it's this or a standalone kind of more contributor summit event. But as of right now, I'm inclined to think that this would kind of make the most sense, both for the Cloud Foundry in general, but also Paketo Buildpacks. I think it would be a good opportunity. So, yeah.
Yeah, also some of the experiences I've had recently with big events is that for us to have to have the support and the budget to attend to the conference, it's way easier when we have an accepted talk, when we submit a CFP and it's accepted. What we have done with some other projects is in order to scale this out, let's say, it's to work on 2 or 3 proposals. I mean, working on the abstract, what will be a session. It's a collaborative effort and then submit that to different events. Because the rate of acceptance for KubeCon Europe was 19%, I believe it was
Pretty
really low.
competitive, yeah.
Yeah, pretty competitive, and it's not clear. I'm still waiting on feedback from the CNCF committee chairs on some sessions that spent a lot of time with a lot of people working, and they were rejected. So we would like to know what's the criteria there. That feedback will be useful for us to
Right.
work on submissions, I believe. But I will start working on proposals now as a team, because the CFP for KubeCon North America is already open, which is sick. And there are many other conferences, meetups that I think will make sense. But all of them require us to write proposals and to be able to communicate what the audience is going to learn, what are the takeaways, and all that. So we can set up like a small initiative. I don't want to say the term working group because here it means a totally different thing. But yeah, some collaboration around creating a set of proposals, and then we can start applying, and that will make really feasible to to get the team attending to events. That's my experience so far.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, a couple things. One, as far as, if we were going to do this event, I would get, explicit, like state for higher ups at VMware and SAP and other Cloud Foundry companies, like they would need to just tell me that they were going to send people to this, right? Because we want at least a couple hundred people for the Cloud Foundry, event leading up to it. And we'd have our own CFP for that. So there could be talks in that. And we'd love to have some Paketo part of that. And that could be kind of a Paketo contributor summit portion of that day. And then there's the CFP for KubeCon itself. But also beyond that, even if no talks were accepted, which, I'm sure we can get something accepted, but, we'd have a booth on the floor at KubeCon, which is a bit of a zoo from previous experience. But you just get the name out there. You get to talk to some people. It's a little tiring, but fun. So yeah, I guess I can follow up with folks after this call. But it sounds like people would be somewhat interested in this, I think. So I'll be reaching out to Craig McLucky and various other folks about this, and I think this is what I'm going to recommend we do for a project. So I just wanted to, get feedback from you all. So.
Thank you, Chris, for bringing this up. Cool. Any other comment around this topic? No. All right. So we'll move to review outstanding RFCs. The source removal Buildpack RFC. It has several approvals.
This one might be ready to go. Is Forrest on?
He's out sick today.
Okay. Yeah, I think this might be ready to be merged. Probably just want to get one last thumbs up from Forrest though.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Any other comment around this RFC? Move to the next one, secure runtime environment. This been waiting from comments from the author, and I believe that's the case still, right?
Sorry, I had a few questions,
Oh.
I guess.
You're there, sorry, welcome.
Thanks. Like some of these seem open-ended. Like I wasn't sure if you wanted me to address them or like how you wanted those to be addressed. Like things around how to go about testing these or creating a new set of builders or like how the integration test would work. Like, is there? I didn't see a consensus on how that would work. So just waiting on that, I think.
I had this one question at the end, which was, so Sam, I think you'd outlined like, we end up creating like separate run images and then builders, and just temporary builders get used in some set of integration tests.
Yeah.
I was mostly just kind of wondering if we could get away with just doing the run images by themselves, because you can like effectively hot swap that out when you call pack build. You can say, here's a different run image I want you to use. I guess I'm just trying to like whittle this down into like the smallest set of things we can do, so maybe we could just move faster when we do adopt it. So I just was wondering from you, like it felt to me like that was sufficient for us to have just one extra run image with a different user ID. I just wanted to double check with you that that aligned with your expectations.
Just in terms of tests, yeah, that would also work. I mean, I just wasn't sure what the rollout strategy, if any, would be for this RFC. Like I saw some comments around targeting this as the default for the new set of stacks, like the new Ubuntu version, or whether you just wanna introduce a new builder entirely. So like rather than full, there would be like a secure builder that now, like with the new Ubuntu version, you can still have the equivalent builders to what you have for Bionic right now, but like there would be an additional secure set of builders that have a different user ID, or if you just want to have that as the default. So like I think those were a couple of open questions, and then that would potentially affect how you want to test this. Because like if we're not targeting this for Bionic and we're only just targeting it for the next set of stacks, then we can just avoid the whole run image business or anything else. We can just use the new builders.
I think that makes sense. I was working before this meeting, but did not get to a completed RFC outlining what a jammy jellyfish stack would look like. And my proposal in that does have different user ID from group ID. I think the expectation going forward is that we would have differentiation between those user IDs in all the stacks we produce, but that we wouldn't change it in the Bionic stack. And maybe we would just leave it as is, considering it's going to be going out of support in the next year.
Yeah. So for this specific RFC, do I want to block on like the fact that we'll add support for this in the next set of Ubuntu stacks, or do you still want these build packs to be tested with a different image as they are right now?
I don't think so. I mean, I'd love to hear from Emily. Unfortunately, is not able to be here today. I'd love to hear what she might have to say on this, but I don't see why we would need to block, particularly on testing, to make sure that this works on the Ubuntu stacks. If we can get the build packs to work on Jammy with different user IDs and group IDs, then, or sorry, different user IDs between build and run, then I feel like that should be sufficient going forward. If that's the thing you want, then you should just move forward to like the Jammy stacks.
Yeah. So I think if we can just get consensus on that, that's pretty much the only unresolved comment. I'll leave a note for Emily in this RFC, and then we can just continue the conversation there.
Thank you, Sam. Right, next up, the image retention policy. Any comment around this RFC?
It's still on me to do a couple updates.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Seems like there's a new RFC.
Yeah, so this RFC is covering a piece of the Stacks code base that the Stacks maintainer team currently maintains. They've got this, if you go and look at the Paketo Buildpacks Stacks repository, underneath there is a library / CLI tool that you can use to create stacks. One of the bigger problems with this code base is that the way you define a stack is very tightly coupled to the library itself. In fact, you have to write a whole bunch of Go code in order to like actually have a stack declared. And so I've been spending a bunch of time refactoring that code base and trying to get it to a point where I can push all of the configuration for things that you might want to declare for a stack out into a file, things like what are the user IDs and group IDs for the build and run image, and what is the stack identifier itself, and so on and so forth. So I've basically got the code base into a state where all that stuff is pushed out, and I've produced a configuration file that looks like this. And I'm proposing that it's something that that code base could then adopt, meaning that we could then build our new stacks going forward. So like Jammy and any other future stacks we choose to adopt on top of this kind of like configuration file specification. I just want to get feedback from folks, maybe anyone else who's building a separate stack, just pointing out things I may have missed or things that maybe should be configurable here that aren't, or maybe options that I should disable. Yeah, just looking for some feedback on that front, hopefully to help kind of guide the direction there.
Actually, I had a quick question on this. What would you expect in that Docker file field in the config? Because I'm looking at the fields in the configuration file that you've specified, and I feel like most of those are things, I might be mistaken, that in our code now we're adding to the Docker file for our stacks. So like, what would the Docker file be for?
The Docker file points at the base image that the stack is like kind of built from. So that the actual Docker file itself has your like from declaration to say this is from, say, Ubuntu Jammy. It then has like any of the kind of like actual OS specific installation steps that you need to actually install packages or download any CLI tools or anything that needs to get installed in the stack that's like very specific to the OS. The other stuff here is like relatively straightforward stuff that's common across any Linux-based Docker file, where basically I'm just setting like environment variables, or I'm mutating like common Linux files that are present in like all the OS distributions. So the stuff here that's kind of exposed, like UID and GID and shell, those things are like relatively common Linux primitives that we don't think every stack should have to have that like boilerplate in them. But there will be differences obviously between say like UBI or CentOS and a Debian or Ubuntu in terms of say how they go about installing base packages.
Any other comment around this new RFC? Otherwise, remember, yeah, please.
I think there was some question about what's like the value out of this approach over just doing it in a Docker file. I know you just touched on there's being some kind of duplicate concerns, but is it really just kind of trying to extract those out, or is there some more, I guess, power for doing it in Go like this?
A couple of the things is we've started thinking about how we're going to do like SBOM support. So Paketo already has SBOM, like a SBOM label attached to all the stacks. If we were to just have all this stuff in a Docker file, you'd have to have like duplicated logic for attaching SBOMs in all of those things in all the Docker files. And then depending upon how the run image SBOM concept lands in CNB, we'd want to also have that kind of support in any sort of tool. On the Paketo side, that kind of thing would probably be common across all the stacks. So I think that advantage, I guess, is just trying to reduce a lot of the kind of duplicated efforts as much as possible.
Okay.
And then also kind of like expose those things that are clearly configurable as declarative in like a top level file that's easy to see like what something's set to.
Sure. That, I guess this would probably also make it easier so that if you wanted your own base and run images, you have to do less to them, I suppose. Okay. That seems interesting.
I think another value add for me is like setting user IDs or creating the appropriate files when you're creating, when you're using base images that don't have those appropriate Linux utilities. I don't know if that covers this.
Yeah, so the tool I'm building is actually like manipulating the files directly in the same way that like user add or group add would, so that you'll be able to use it against a stack that doesn't have those built-in utilities without having to duplicate that logic.
That's pretty nice. I wonder if there's anything we should try to push back to like the CNB. Just thinking along the lines of like, it is nice to have our processes kind of match with the processes that, you know, the documentation on the CNB side suggests.
There was at some point a pack create stack thing. This might be a good candidate for that. The other thing that I think might be missing is the ability to set the home directories for the users to a different value. I know
That's good. I think I have it hard coded for now. That's a good suggestion.
Great. Any other comment?
Could there be any need for adjusting permissions to particular locations? I'm just thinking about some of the more secure lockdown, you know, things that we've discussed recently. If there might be a case where you would want to be able to adjust like the ownership of you know, a certain directory or something in the image that gets created or in the stack.
I think I'd be open to that as a suggestion. I didn't find any cases of us wanting to do that in the stacks we maintain today, so I just didn't implement it as a concept. But if that's something that folks care about, I don't see why we couldn't add a feature like that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can't think of a direct need for it, but I was just thinking that, you know, in the interest of locking things down more, maybe somebody would want to, like, you know, make sure that certain directories are only, you know, readable by certain users. It's probably something that would be difficult to express in a concise config file, but I'm sure we can circle back and add that later if a more concrete use case comes up.
I think for us, like we've been using the secure runtime environment stuff for over a year. The reason why we've never had to do that is because our run images are very minimal. So only users in there are like the build user, the run user, and root, or like whatever the base image shipped with, which is different than the build time and runtime user. And like we don't add anything to the stack that's not from the Buildpacks. So either you do sudo apt get install, in which case it's root again, or like some other thing that's globally readable, or not. So like I haven't found a use case where like I needed to change the ownership of the files to the build user or the run user in any of the base images. And like if you're storing sensitive stuff under a different user in your base images, you shouldn't be doing that anyway. Like so
Right. Thank you all. Any additional comment around this RFC? Yeah. Thank you, Sam. All right. Looks like that's it from RFCs. Next up will be updates from the Elite Tmb project. Is there any update or questions around this?
I think Ryan, Emily, and I met a bit today to discuss a few things. No major updates. We were just discussing the existing RFC that's open upstream around a testing library. And in the past CNB BAT team meetings, we discussed like what would it take on our side to make the Paketo tooling team comfortable enough to donate something like Occam or Packet to the Buildpacks project, and or how we can just consolidate on all the interfaces we have. The short summary is like we're gonna figure out some of the governance related things on the CNB side to make the Paketo maintainers comfortable, or like just figuring out the alternatives we have on the governance side to make sure that the current maintainers have appropriate permissions if they were to be transferred to CNB, and also figure out the list of interfaces that are common between Packet and libcnb, and what parts can be generalized to something like libcnb versus what parts need to remain in Packet. I don't know if that directly answers the libcnb v2 updates question, but sort of related.
Yeah, great information. All right. Okay, seems like next up will be project update. For now, well, thanks to Chris and the CFF team. I finally know where are all the metrics for the Paketo project. Where is the Victoria instance running? It's rolling on Linux Foundation Insights. And as per my questions on which repos to track, well, all of them. This tool is tracking all of the repos, which is really great. So I'll be using the insights, well, the details from this tool to finally collect an assessment on the current health of the project in terms of community engagement, not exactly technical health or something like that. So we can collectively work on a plan on all the stuff that probably needs to be done to keep supporting this community and make it grow. So this information is the goal. And thank you, Chris, for this. All right. Okay. Any other update you like to share? Any other question? No. Okay. It was a great meeting. Thank you all for joining. Hope to see you next week.